Go and look at the table you eat off. Not the whole thing. Get down low, catch the light across it, and look at the surface. There will be a white ring on it somewhere, a dent where somebody set something down harder than they meant to, a scratch across the grain that catches your eye every time you walk past. And I would guess you have already stood in the aisle at the hardware store, in front of a wall of little tubes and sticks and sprays, and picked one and taken it home, and it was near enough the wrong color and it sat there like a scab. Put the tube down. The 5 best things I know for that table are already in your house, most of them in the kitchen, and every one of them costs less than $1. I have fixed more furniture with what was already in the cupboard than with anything I ever bought in a package. Start with the first one, because it is the one that stops people in their tracks. Number 1, a walnut. The nut out of the shell, the way it comes at Christmas. You take the meat of one shelled walnut and you rub it hard along a scratch in finished wood, going with the grain, and you keep at it for a good half-minute. Then you rub it in with your fingertip. The warmth of your finger matters, and you buff it off with a soft rag. What is happening is not magic, and it is not a trick. That nut is heavy with natural oil, and the oil carries the pigment out of the nut meat into the scratch. A scratch shows up pale because you have broken the finish and roughed the wood so it scatters the light instead of reflecting it. Fill that furrow with a dark oil and it goes dark again, and it stops catching your eye. It works best on medium to dark woods: walnut, cherry, oak that has darkened with age, mahogany. On light maple or pine, it will read too dark, so try it somewhere hidden first, on the underside of a leaf or the back of a leg, which is a rule you should follow with every single thing in this video. A pecan does the same job, so does a Brazil nut, and that is your first dollar spent, out of a bowl on the counter. Now here is the honest limit on it, because you will hear this trick given out 100 times online and never once with the caveat: it is not permanent. It is oil sitting in a furrow, and oil moves. Wipe that table down hard with a wet cloth a dozen times, and the scratch will start to show again. That does not make it a bad fix. It makes it a fix you redo in about 11 seconds when you notice it, which is a better arrangement than most permanent things I know. Keep the shell nuts in the cupboard, and think of it the way you think of polishing a shoe. Now, I want to be square with you before we go any further, because this whole video lives or dies on one distinction, and most folks never hear it said out loud. Everything I am handing you today fixes the surface, the finish and the top fibers of the wood, scratches, dents, rings, dull spots, small gaps. What none of it fixes is structure. If the joint has let go, if the leg wobbles, if a rail has cracked through, no amount of walnut or mayonnaise on this earth will help you, and anybody who tells you otherwise is selling views. That is a joint problem, and it wants a proper repair, and I have a whole video on the joints themselves. Surface is what we are doing today, and surface is 9/10 of what bothers people about a piece of furniture. And before you put a single thing on that table, spend 2 minutes finding out what you are actually looking at. This is the part nobody teaches, and it is the part that decides whether the afternoon goes well. Take the piece to the window, or take a lamp to the piece, and get your eye down low so the light rakes across the surface almost sideways. You cannot see damage looking straight down at it. Straight down, everything is a color. Sideways, everything is a shape, and a shape tells you what happened. A scratch has a hard edge and a bottom to it. Run a fingernail across it gently, across the grain, not along. If your nail catches and drops in, you have broken through into the wood, and that wants color. If your nail glides straight over and the mark is still there, you have only scuffed the finish, and that mark will very often buff out with nothing more than a soft cloth and a little wax, and you should try that before you try anything stronger. A dent has no edge at all. It is a smooth little valley, and the light bends across it instead of stopping. That is the one the iron is for. A ring is a cloud, not a line. It sits in a layer and it has no depth to it, and it will look worse from one angle than another, which is the giveaway. And a bloom, a general foggy dullness over a whole panel, most often on old pieces, is usually neither damage nor dirt. It is moisture that has got into an old finish over years, or 40 years of polish gone cloudy on top of it. That one very often comes back with the least work of all, and I will come to it. One more thing to know before you start, and it is the single most useful piece of knowledge in furniture repair. What finish is on the piece? Get somewhere hidden inside a leg, the back edge, under the top, and put 1 drop of rubbing alcohol on it. Wait a moment and touch it. If it goes tacky and soft, that is shellac, which is what most furniture built before about the 1920s has on it. And shellac is the most forgiving finish that has ever existed because it will melt into itself and heal. Now try a drop of lacquer thinner somewhere else hidden. If that softens it, you have lacquer, which is most factory furniture from the 20s through the 70s. If neither one touches it, you very likely have a modern varnish or polyurethane, which is tough and waterproof and repairs the worst of the three, because it will not melt into itself, and every repair has to be done from the outside. That test takes 2 minutes, and it tells you how much room you have. Shellac, you can be bold. Polyurethane, be gentle and be patient, and expect to work around it rather than through it. Number 2, and this is the one I would want you to remember if you forget everything else: a clothes iron and a damp cotton rag. This is for a dent. Somebody dropped a can on the table, and there is a little crater in it. Here is the thing to understand first, and it decides whether this works or is a waste of your afternoon. A dent and a gouge are not the same injury. A dent is crushed wood. The fibers are all still there, squashed down like a trodden patch of grass. A gouge is missing wood. The fibers have been cut out and carried away. You can raise a dent. You cannot raise a gouge. And anybody demonstrating this trick on a gouge is fooling you. So, if the spot is finished over, you will need to break the finish in that little area, and the honest way is a light scuff with fine sandpaper, 220 grit or finer, just in the dent, just enough for water to get down to the wood. Then a cotton rag, wet, wrung out so it is damp and not dripping. Lay it over the dent. Iron on medium, no steam setting needed, and hold it on the rag over that spot for a few seconds at a time, lifting and looking, lifting and looking. What you will actually see, and it is one of the small pleasures of this trade, is the wood swelling back up. The water soaks into those crushed fibers, the heat drives it in and turns it to steam, and the fibers plump out to something near where they started. On solid wood it is remarkable. A dent that has been in a table for 15 years will come most of the way back in about 4 minutes. 2 honest limits. First, it works on solid wood, and it does not work on veneer over particle board, where the wet and the heat will lift the veneer and leave you worse off than you started. Second, it rarely comes all the way back to perfect. 90% is a good result. Then you let it dry a day and touch the finish back in. Now, how do you know whether you have solid wood or veneer, since the whole thing turns on it? Look at the edge of the top, and then look at the end of it. On solid wood, the grain runs over the top and keeps going down the edge and comes out the other side, because it is one board. On veneer, you will see a thin, dark line about the thickness of a playing card running along the edge, and often a strip of banding glued on to hide it. Open a drawer and look at the underside of the top from below. That tells you in about a second. If you find veneer, do not despair. Just do not use water and heat on it. Veneer takes color and wax perfectly well. And if it is a gouge and not a dent, do not stand there ironing it hoping. Fill it. That is what the wax at number 5 is for. Or on a piece you are going to refinish anyway, sawdust from that same board mixed with a little glue, packed in and leveled off once it has gone hard. And keep the iron moving and keep your hand out from under it. Hot metal and steam will burn you the same in a shop as it will in a laundry. Number 3, mayonnaise, and if you have not got it, plain cooking oil and a pinch of wood ash. This is for the white ring, the one the cold glass left, or the hot mug. A white ring is not a stain, and it is not damage to the wood. It is moisture trapped inside the finish, in among the layers, and it goes white because the trapped water scatters the light. That is the whole of it. And once you know that, the fix makes sense because you are not cleaning anything. You are getting the water out. The way I do it is to smear a good dollop of mayonnaise over the ring, thick, and leave it sitting overnight, 12 hours longer on a stubborn one. The oil works its way slowly into the finish and displaces the moisture, and in the morning you wipe it off and the ring is gone, or it is a ghost of itself, and a second night usually finishes it. If you have no mayonnaise, plain oil does the same, and a little very fine ash from the wood stove mixed into it, or a pinch of baking soda, gives you the mildest abrasive there is to work with your finger in a circle, gentle. If you press hard with an abrasive, you will cut through the finish, and then you have a repair instead of a ring. There is a second way, and on shellac it is the better one. A rag barely damp with denatured alcohol, barely I mean a rag that looks dry, wiped fast across the ring once and lifted. What that does is soften the very top of the shellac, just enough for it to flow back together and let the moisture out, and the cloud goes with it. It is the same principle as the iron, only chemical. It is also the fastest way to ruin a finish if you are heavy-handed with it. So it is the hidden corner first, always, and one pass and stop. Now, the honest part. This works on a white cloudy ring which is water in the finish. It does not work on a black ring, and a black ring is a different animal entirely. That is water that got all the way through the finish and into the wood and reacted with the tannin, and to fix a black one you have to strip and go after the wood itself. And it does nothing at all on a raw, unfinished surface, where it will just soak in and eventually go rancid on you. I learned that last one the hard way on a pine bench I had left bare, smelled like a picnic gone wrong for a month, and that general foggy bloom I mentioned earlier. Over a whole panel, try the mayonnaise on a patch of that too, or better, try nothing but a clean rag and a little paste wax rubbed hard. A great deal of what people take for a ruined finish is old wax and old polish that has gone cloudy on top of a perfectly sound one. You are not adding anything. You are taking 40 years off it. Number 4, black tea and its cousin vinegar with a bit of steel wool in it. Tea first. You brew a couple of bags strong, let it cool, and dab it on with a rag or a small brush. The reason it works is tannin, and tannin is worth understanding because it explains half the color in old furniture. Tea is loaded with it, so is oak. When you put strong tea onto a light scratch on a dark piece, you are laying down a thin brown that soaks into the raw wood and knocks the pale line back. It is what folks reached for long before there was a shelf of touch-up markers. Build it up in coats and let each one dry rather than trying to get there in one wet go. Coffee, cooled and strong, does about the same and pulls a little redder. Now the cousin, and this is the one that will impress you. Put a pad of plain steel wool into a jar of ordinary white vinegar and leave it a few days, then strain it. What you get is a thin, ugly, brownish liquid, and when you brush it onto oak or any other wood with tannin in it, the iron in the liquid and the tannin in the wood react, and the wood goes gray and aged in front of you. No pigment, no stain. It is a chemical handshake happening in the wood itself. That is the old way of making a new board, match an old piece, and I use it whenever I have to let a new rail into something 40 years old. It works strongest on oak and chestnut, weakly on pine, and if your wood is short on tannin, you can lay a coat of that strong tea down first to give it some, then hit it with the vinegar solution. That is a proper old world trick, and it costs pennies. Making it is worth doing properly because everybody gets this part wrong. Use plain steel wool, the fine grade, and pull it apart first so the vinegar can get all through it. Do not use a scouring pad out of the sink because those have soap and sometimes a coating in them. Loose lid, not tight, because it gives off a bit of gas as it works. 3 or 4 days on a shelf is enough. A week is better, and you will know it is ready when the wool has mostly gone to nothing and the liquid has turned the color of weak tea. Strain it through an old cloth into a clean jar. Brush it on thin. It goes on looking like dirty water and does nothing for about a minute, and then the color comes up out of the wood while you watch, and that is the moment that makes a believer of anybody standing in the shop with you. 1 coat on white oak will take you to a soft gray brown. 2 takes you nearly to black. It is strong stuff and it does not stop when you want it to, so keep a rag and clean water beside you, and when it hits the shade you want, wipe it and let it dry. Some folks neutralize it after with a weak baking soda and water wipe. On furniture I mostly do not bother, but on anything I want dead stable I do. Test it. Every board takes it different, and that is not me hedging, it is just true. 2 boards off the same tree will take it different if one came off the heart and one off the sap, and I have had that surprise me after 30 years. Number 5. Beeswax, or the stub of a plain candle. This is for the small gaps, the nail holes, the little chips at an edge, the thing the tube of filler is sold for, and honestly does worse. Take a bit of beeswax, warm it between your fingers until it is soft as putty, and press it into the hole with your thumb, packing it in rather than smearing it on. Then take something with a straight edge that is not sharp, an old credit card, a plastic scraper, the back of a butter knife, and scrape across the surface to take off everything that stands proud. Buff it with a rag and it is done, and it will hold for years. If you want the color to match, warm the wax gently and stir in some sawdust from the same piece. Not sanding dust from the floor. Sawdust off the actual board so the color is right, because the sawdust off your bench is a mixture of every project you ever built. And if you want to be clever about it, make yourself 2 shades and keep them. Wood is never one color. The trick that makes a wax fill disappear is not matching the average color of the board. It is going 1 shade lighter than you think, and then drawing a hair-thin dark line across it with the corner of a pencil to carry the board. Grain through. The eye follows grain. Break the grain and the eye stops there every time. Carry the grain across and the eye walks straight over the repair and never notices it. Where wax beats the hardware store filler is that it stays a little bit soft forever, so when the wood swells in summer and shrinks in winter, and it will, the wax moves with it instead of cracking out and dropping on the floor. Where wax loses is that it takes no stain and no finish over the top. So wax goes in last, after everything else is done. Get that order backwards and you will be picking it out again. If you want the whole conversation about proper gap filling on a piece you have not finished yet, that is its own video and I have made it. This is the 5-minute version for a piece that is already in your living room. Now, the order matters, and this is the part that will save you from doing good work in the wrong sequence and having to do it twice. If a piece has several things wrong with it, you go clean, dent, ring, color, wax, finish. In that order every time. Clean first, with nothing stronger than a damp cloth and a bit of mild soap, because half of what people think is damage is 40 years of polish and hand grease sitting on top of a perfectly good finish. Then raise your dents, because that wants water and heat, and you do not want either of those anywhere near fresh color work. Then pull your rings, because that is an overnight job and you may as well have it working while you sleep. Then do your color, tea or walnut, and let it dry properly. Then wax the holes. Then, and only then, put a coat of finish over the lot if the piece wants one. And I have a whole video on which finish and why, so I will not go over that ground again. Do it backwards. And here is what happens. You wax first, then you try to color, and the color will not take where the wax is. Or you steam a dent after you have laid down tea, and you lift your color straight back out of the wood. Sequence is free. Getting it wrong costs you an afternoon. And while I am on it, let me tell you the things in that same cupboard that do not work, because there is as much nonsense on the internet about this as there is good sense. Do not use the spray oil in the blue and yellow can on furniture. It will make a scratch vanish for about a week, and then it comes right back, and worse, it leaves silicone in the wood, and silicone is the one contaminant that will wreck any finish you ever try to put on that piece afterward. It fisheyes, it crawls. A finisher can spot a piece that has had that stuff on it from across a room, and there is no easy fix. Do not use toothpaste. I know it gets recommended constantly. It is an abrasive meant for enamel, which is harder than any finish on any table you own, and what it actually does is cut through your finish and leave a dull patch that is now a bigger job than the scratch was. Do not use a banana peel or plain olive oil on its own as a polish. Anything that can go rancid will, and then you have a piece of furniture that smells faintly wrong and you cannot work out why. That is why I said mayonnaise for the ring and then wipe it off, not mayonnaise as a treatment you leave on. Do not take a hot iron to a piece of veneer, which I have said once already and will say twice, because it is the one that does real and permanent damage. And go easy on the aerosol furniture polish generally. Most of it is wax and solvent, and it builds up into a soft, cloudy film that traps dust and eventually looks worse than bare wood. If a piece looks dull, 9 times out of 10, it does not want more polish. It wants the old polish taken off. Now, let me put the money on the table, because that is really the point of all of this. A tube of wood filler runs you $6 or $7, and it will be the wrong color. A touch-up marker set, $12 to $20. A can of scratch cover spray, $10. A bottle of ring remover, $8 or $9. Buy the lot and you are near $50, and I will tell you plainly, having tried most of them, that the walnut does a better job on a scratch than any marker I have ever owned, because the marker sits on top and the oil goes in. Against that, the 5 things in this video: a walnut out of the bowl, an iron you already own, a spoon of mayonnaise, 2 tea bags, and a candle stub. Call it $1, and most of that is the tea. Here is the honest beat, and it is the same one I would give a neighbor standing in my shop. None of this makes a damaged piece new. It makes it look cared for. There is a difference, and you will see it if you get close with the light in the right place. What it does do is stop a good solid piece of furniture from going to the curb because of a ring and 3 scratches, and that is a trade worth making every single time. I think about a fellow I knew, Melvin Petersheim, over Lancaster Way, who kept a dry sink his wife's mother had brought into the marriage. That thing had rings on it, you could count like tree rings, one for every hard winter. He never refinished it. He kept a lump of beeswax and a jar of that vinegar, and steel wool in the cupboard under it, and every year or 2 he would spend an evening with it. That sink is still in the family, and it does not look new, and nobody wants it to. That is the difference between repairing furniture and restoring it. Restoring makes it look like it was never used. Repairing lets it keep its history and still hold your dishes. So, before I let you go, the recap, and take a picture of this if you want it. A shelled walnut, rubbed hard with the grain for scratches on medium and dark wood. A damp cotton rag and a warm iron for dents in solid wood. Dents only, not gouges, not veneer. Mayonnaise overnight for the white ring, not the black ring. Strong black tea for color, and vinegar with steel wool in it for aging new wood to match old, on oak and anything else with tannin. Beeswax, worked in with your thumb and scraped flush for holes and chips, and it goes in last. Test every one of them somewhere, nobody looks first. The underside of the leaf, the back of a leg, inside the drawer. That one habit will save you more grief than all 5 put together. And if the wood is soft and punky and gives when you press a thumbnail into it, that is not a surface problem, that is rot, and none of this touches it. That is a different repair and a different video. Somebody built that table. Probably somebody dead now whose name you do not know. They picked the boards, cut the joints, and sent it out into the world expecting it to be used and marked and mended, because that is what furniture was for before it came in a flat box. Fix the ring, keep the table. Build it once. Build it to last 100 years. I'll see you back at the bench.